for the longest time, I've been sort of stuck in my ways when it comes to WordPress because I did not want to use the Gutenberg block editor to do full site design. I just didn't want to deal with it. Every time I played with it, it was like, this thing's kind of like janky. It's a pain in the butt. I'd rather use Elementor or a real theme. But I changed my mind, and I've recently switched my entire website over to the Gutenberg block editor. I abandoned BuddyBoss and Elementor. I'm probably never going to use a page builder on this site ever again, and I want to tell you why, and I want to tell you how it actually went. So in a previous blog post at blogmarketingacademy.com, I talked about page builders versus Gutenberg, and I talked about my decision to convert over to a block-based theme. And in my case, I chose Cadence themes, okay? Now, some people have asked me, why did I choose Cadence themes? It's just the one that resonated with me the best. I mean, there's other ones out there like Astra and GeneratePress and Ocean WP, and they're fine. You know, I haven't played with them per se. I've messed around a little bit with Astra, but they're all fine. I just chose Cadence, but the big thing is I wanted to rebuild the entire site off of Gutenberg block editor. And I had a few reasons for that, but the primary one was most definitely speed. And I want to update you on what happened because the project has now been done and the speed difference is off the charts. I mean, my scores on page speed insights and GT metrics just went absolutely through the roof when I switched over. And I also got rid of a bunch of other pesky issues because BuddyBoss, which is the theme that I was using, and the platform that underlies it, are rather server heavy. They actually take up a fair amount of resources. And it's just the way that they're built. There's a lot of code there to power various things. And at the end of the day, I wasn't using it. The only thing that I was using out of BuddyBoss was the forum. I wasn't using any of the other social networking features, not using groups, not using the Zoom integration, none of that stuff. Private messaging was all disabled. And so basically I was running a theme that had a whole lot of bloat in there. And then the platform had things on there like tracking members' online status that was kept pinging the server and increasing server load and pinging for notifications and all these things. None of which I needed, and it was just causing a lot of problems. And then you take BuddyBoss and you slap Elementor on top of that, and it was just a big recipe for bloat because I was using Elementor to basically build chunks of the site that the BuddyBoss theme didn't do a very good job with, and it was just a big beast of a site. Well, and the performance scores showed it. If you look at my performance metrics for like GT, or sorry, not on PageSpeed Insights for desktop, I used to get an 84, roughly in the 80s. Now, obviously, every time that you refresh PageSpeed Insights, you're going to get a different number. So it would go up and down a little bit, but I really never got out of the 80s, and that's on desktop. The thing is, when you go over to the mobile scores, that's typically the hardest number to get up there. And people have kind of just thrown their hands up and be like, mobile scores always suck. And I never really got mine higher than about the upper 60s. The last time I ran it before I started doing anything, I was getting a 69 on mobile. And it really never got higher than that. In fact, sometimes I would run the test and it would be down in the 40s and the 50s. And it was just like one of those things that are like, okay, is this just the world of Elementor? Are they just throttling it? Should I even bother messing with this? But it was worse than that. If you actually look at the core web vitals, they pretty much all failed, especially on mobile, and it was horrible. And there were things that I could do to get those numbers up, but it was like playing whack-a-mole. And ultimately, I figured the only way to really solve this is to just change out the entire infrastructure, switch over to the Gutenberg system. And boy, did it work, because when I switched over, the site has been completely rebuilt on Cadence themes. I am now getting a perfect 100 score on the desktop. It's like there's nothing to be improved upon. And get this, on mobile, the number went all the way up to 97. 97. I mean, I at one point I did it, it was a 98. I've not seen a perfect 100 yet on mobile, but why am I even going to try? I don't need a perfect 100. all of my core web vitals are off the charts. They're all well in the green. Absolutely no problem with that. Literally every little technical whack-a-mole problem that I was having with the old setup, including things like background colors just suddenly disappearing on the rows. And I think it was a situation where the Elementor global variables and the ones that Buddy Boss was throwing in there were conflicting and it just wasn't right. All that disappeared. It's done. I don't have any more of those pesky issues. And basically, it just solved all kinds of stuff. The back end got significantly faster. I stripped out a lot of the garbage. The bloat of the overall footprint of the code significantly went down. According to GT Metrics, my homepage, the overall size of the code went down by 74% from over 850 kilobyte down to a little over 200 kilobyte. A lot of that was just fonts and icons and a bunch of CSS and jQuery and all that stuff that was just being loaded in there by Elementor. All that's gone. We don't need that stuff anymore. And it's just much more streamlined because we're using the native block builder that is the way that WordPress is built now. And it's going to always be faster than a page builder. So the process of doing it was definitely a project. I mean, it's a large project. You take a site like this that is got a lot of Elementor in there, and you basically need to rebuild it. There is no magic button where you can hit a convert button and make this thing work, okay? When you're going from a page builder, which is a whole layer over top of WordPress, and you're taking it down to the base layer of working with the blocks themselves, it is inherently a rebuild process. And so this is not going to be a tutorial on how to convert. I don't really care to show you that right this minute. It's also not going to be a how-to on how to use Cadence. We could talk about that another time, but just on a bird's eye view here, I took the live site into staging. I turned off Buddy Boss. I left Elementor in place, but definitely Buddy Boss was gone, and I turned on the Cadence theme along with Cadence blocks, and I started messing around with it in staging because I needed to find out what elements at the minimum needed to be rebuilt so that it could go live on the main site. I couldn't, sit there and have it in staging only and then hit the button and make it go live because I didn't want to overwrite orders and new subscribers going into the system and just activity that was taking place. So basically I used the staging site to learn how to use Cadence and learn how to design with blocks, because when you're coming from Elementor or Thrive Architect or whatever you may be using, it's definitely a learning curve to start using the Gutenberg block editor to do full site design. And it feels like a slog at first. It's not the most fun thing. It's like, oh, why am I even bothering with this? But if you persevere through that, you sort of get to where you can hold your own with it pretty well. And at this point, I feel like I'm pretty quick with the block editor, pretty much almost as fast as I would be with Elementor or Thrive. It's just a different way of doing it. And so essentially I used the staging site to train myself, get the settings in the customizer right, figure out what needed to be rebuilt, and sort of get a really good solid head start with that. And then I went over to the live site and said, all right, it's go time. And I just started making the changes live on the live site. And I figured, what the hell, people can watch me do it. And so once I took out Buddy Boss and put Cadence in there, I left Elementor in place. And so I used a plugin called the Customizer Export Import plugin. And I basically took all the customizer settings that I had figured out in staging and I just rapidly imported them into the live site. I had to rebuild the templates for the Learn Dash courses using Cadence. They do have some starter templates that can speed that up, but being that I needed it to look like my site and not some starter template, I basically just built the course templates using Cadence elements. And I got the minimum setup in place so that, and I left all the Elementor content sitting there because it'll still work. Elementor and Cadence work together just fine. And then once the site was operational, then it's just a long project of going page by page and template by template and taking what was built with Elementor and rebuilding it on blocks. And I just did it page by page, and it took several days off and on to get that job done. And that's basically what you see now. When you go to blogmarketingacademy.com, the full site is now running on Cadence themes, and I have rebuilt several aspects of it. I've also improved several aspects of it as I've gotten to know the platform better. And the speed increase is what I showed you. It's pretty evident. So below on the site at blogmarketingacademy.com, you can read a little bit more of the details about what it was like actually doing the transition. I'm not going to cover it in this video. I don't want to get too long, but you can go over to the website and read a little bit more about it. Again, this is not meant to be a tutorial on how to use cadence blocks. Maybe we'll be talking more about cadence blocks down the road, but it was more of a bird's eye view of the transition and what the before and the after looks like. And I'm quite happy with it. I'm glad that I did this. I'm kind of in the middle of a big content audit across the site right now because this site has existed for a really long time and there's a lot of old stuff back there and I need to get it all fixed up. Well, the whole point of that typically is to get your traffic up, right? You're trying to improve your SEO and present a better footprint to Google and stuff like that. Well, the thing is, what's the point of doing all that stuff if my core web vitals are failing and the performance settings are not very great on the website? So I figure, okay, let me take a pause from working on the content. Let's go over and handle the technical side of it. And so basically I cleared out a lot of the weeds. The site is just much easier to manage. There's less parts to it now. Same amount of plugins. That's the funny part. So it's not like I reduced a bunch of the plugins. They're the same. It's just significantly faster because of the way the site is inherently built now. And that's interesting. You know, I'm running damn near 50 plugins on this site right now, but because they're all very well coded and the underlying infrastructure is really streamlined natively to the block editor, the site is snappy. And I don't have a whole lot of crazy, weird performance stuff. I'm running WP Rocket like most people. So anyway, that's what we've got going on. I'm really glad I made the switch. Now, if you want to do the switch for yourself, you know, be prepared. It's definitely a little bit of a project to make that work. If you would like to talk with me about the potential of getting some help to make that switch over on your site, just get in touch with me. I can answer some questions for you, let you know what I think might be involved with it. But other than that, it's been a good move. I am probably not going to ever use a page builder on this website ever again. For most of my client sites, if I'm going to be building one from scratch, we're probably going to go with Cadence from now on. I think it's not that Elementor is bad. It's just that it's turned into a bit of a beast. It's a big old thing, you know, and I like Thrive themes too, but it's kind of a big old thing. This is a much more streamlined setup, and the results speak for themselves. Okay, that's enough of me blabbering. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will talk to you later.